There is a plant that any gardener in America can grow for $0, a free plant that manufactures a fertilizer more complete than anything Scott's, Miracle-Gro, or any billion-dollar brand has ever put in a bag. It mines nitrogen from the atmosphere and potassium from bedrock 10 feet below the surface. No store, no subscription, no soil test kits. A man named Ray Turley outside Knoxville, Tennessee, planted 4 root cuttings along a gravel strip behind his garage in 2016. He has not purchased a single bag of fertilizer since. 7 years later, his tomato plants outproduce his entire gardening club, and every member still spends between $200 and $600 a year on synthetic feeds. The fertilizer industry spends more money each year marketing deficiency than any weed could ever cost them in lost sales. They did not fail to notice, comfrey. They deliberately made sure you never would. The global synthetic fertilizer industry generates over $230 billion a year. In the United States alone, the lawn and garden fertilizer segment accounts for nearly $12 billion annually. An estimated 40% of that revenue comes from recurring seasonal NPK purchases, spring feeds, summer boosters, fall winterizers, bought by homeowners and small-scale growers every single year without question. A perennial weed that produces its own NPK at concentrations rivaling commercial blends, that grows back stronger every time you cut it, and that never requires replacement, cannot be allowed to exist in mainstream gardening knowledge. They did not overlook this plant because it is ineffective. They overlooked it because it eliminates the need to ever buy their product again. Welcome to Bloomin' Homestead. If you are not subscribed yet, hit subscribe and the bell. This is where we expose the gardening and homesteading secrets that billion-dollar industries are desperately trying to hide from you. In 1893, a British agricultural chemist named Henry Doubleday was working on fiber research at a small experimental station outside Colchester, England. He was not studying fertilizers. He was trying to extract mucilage from the roots of a common Eurasian plant, Symphytum X uplandicum, known commonly as Russian comfrey, to use as an industrial adhesive. During root extraction, Doubleday noticed something his colleagues dismissed. The soil around long-established comfrey stands tested dramatically richer in potassium, phosphorus, and trace minerals than identical soil just 10 meters away. The roots, which penetrated 8 to 10 feet into clay subsoil, were acting like biological mining drills. They reached nutrient deposits that no surface-rooted crop could access, and transported those minerals upward into the leaves. Doubleday documented the phenomenon and called it dynamic nutrient accumulation. When comfrey leaves were cut and left on the soil surface, they decomposed in under 3 weeks and released their mineral payload directly into the topsoil. The plant effectively operated as a free, self-renewing fertilizer factory. A colleague at the station, Lawrence Hills, later tested comfrey leaf tissue and found potassium concentrations comparable to commercial potash, the same compound sold in bags for $30 to $50 at every garden center in the country. Hills established the Henry Doubleday Research Association in 1954 specifically to study and promote comfrey as a fertility tool. He published decades of trial data, and the commercial fertilizer industry responded with total institutional silence. But Henry Doubleday was not working for the fertilizer industry. He was working in fiber science, and fiber science operates on a fundamentally different economic model. Material researchers want a plant that produces abundantly, reliably, and cheaply. Fertilizer companies want a product the customer must repurchase every 6 to 8 weeks. When the synthetic fertilizer revolution exploded in the post-war era, the industry did not choose synthetics because they were superior to biological nutrient cycling. They chose synthetics because they degraded predictably. A water-soluble nitrogen granule delivers a burst of growth for 3 to 6 weeks, then vanishes from the soil. The customer watches their lawn pale, their tomatoes stall, and reaches the only conclusion the industry wants them to reach: time to buy another bag. They did not see nutrient depletion as a flaw. They saw it as a feature. By the 1960s, the fertilizer industry had standardized a seasonal application model that has barely changed in over 60 years. Step 1. Soil test marketed as essential, often sold by the same company selling the fertilizer. Step 2. Spring blend, granular NPK, typically 10-10-10, or a custom ratio. Step 3. Mid-season liquid feed or slow-release booster. Step 4. Fall winterizer with high potassium. That cycle repeats every single year. The average American home gardener spends between $200 and $600 annually on synthetic fertilizer products. A serious vegetable grower or small-scale market farmer can spend upward of $1,500 annually. Meanwhile, the principle that Henry Doubleday documented in 1893 still works perfectly on every modern garden bed, raised planter, and backyard food forest in existence. The active mechanism behind comfrey's fertility power is elegantly simple. The plant's taproot, which can reach 10 feet in established specimens, penetrates well below the shallow zone where most garden plants feed. Down in the subsoil and fractured bedrock, the root contacts mineral deposits of potassium, phosphorus, calcium, magnesium, and iron that surface roots cannot reach. The plant absorbs these minerals through root pressure and transports them into the leaf tissue. When those leaves are cut and laid on the garden surface or steeped in water to create a concentrated liquid feed, the minerals release back into the topsoil in plant-available form. It does not add synthetic salts that damage soil biology. It does not create nutrient runoff that poisons waterways. It cycles minerals from the deep earth to surface soil, exactly as forests have done for 400 million years, permanently and for free. Stay with me, because what the fertilizer industry did to keep this knowledge out of mainstream gardening is where the real money trail starts. A landmark study published in the Journal of the Science of Food and Agriculture in 2007 tested comfrey leaf tissue from 12 cultivars across 3 growing seasons. Researchers at Coventry University measured NPK content per dry weight against commercial organic fertilizers sold in UK garden centres. The comfrey cultivar, known as Bocking 14, tested at a potassium concentration of 7.09% dry weight, higher than commercial liquid tomato feeds, and within range of granular potassium products retailing for $40 to $50 per bag. Nitrogen levels tested at 3.12%, phosphorus at 0.48%, with significant concentrations of calcium, magnesium, and iron. The researchers concluded that comfrey-derived fertilizer represented a viable, complete replacement for purchased amendments in small-scale horticultural systems. That study was published in a peer-reviewed journal, cited over 80 times, and completely and utterly ignored by every major fertilizer brand, garden center chain, and mainstream gardening publication in the English-speaking world. If you have made it this far, you already understand more about soil fertility than 99% of gardeners who walk into a Home Depot every spring. And that is exactly what the fertilizer industry is terrified of. An informed gardener is a gardener who never walks down their aisle again. So why is this not common knowledge? The answer is hiding in plain sight inside the revenue reports. Scott's Miracle-Gro alone reported $3.6 billion in annual revenue, with lawn and garden consumer products accounting for a dominant share. The Fertilizer Institute estimates the U.S. turf and ornamental segment alone at over $8 billion. Industry analysts estimate that 35 to 45% of consumer fertilizer revenue comes from repeat seasonal purchases, the exact revenue stream a perennial self-renewing plant eliminates permanently. That means roughly $3 to $5 billion per year flows through garden center registers for a problem that a free weed solves forever. You cannot patent a wild perennial that has grown across Eurasia for thousands of years. You cannot create a subscription model around a plant the customer only needs to establish once. You cannot generate repeat seasonal purchases when the fertility source regenerates itself every 3 weeks from spring through fall. You cannot build a retail empire on a solution the customer grows in their own backyard for nothing. The products currently sold as organic liquid fertilizers are mostly diluted seaweed extracts, fish hydrolysates, and humic acid blends. They work by providing a short burst of plant-available nutrients. The result looks impressive for about 3 weeks. Then the nutrients wash through the root zone and the plants stall. The customer watches their garden plateau and reaches the obvious conclusion that organic growing simply requires constant purchased inputs. That conclusion drives them directly to the garden center every single time. This is not an accident. This is a designed failure engineered into the product formulation itself. Find a source for Bocking 14 comfrey root cuttings. Search online nurseries or permaculture suppliers. A pack of 10 to 25 cuttings typically costs between $12 and $20. And that is the last money you will ever spend on fertility. Choose a location along a garden border, fence line, or an unused strip. Comfrey tolerates partial shade, but thrives in full sun. Dig holes 4 to 6 inches deep, spaced 2 to 3 feet apart. Place each root cutting horizontally in the hole and cover with soil. Water once after planting. In the first year, allow the plants to establish without heavy harvesting. Cut once or twice at most. Beginning in year 2, harvest by cutting the entire plant down to 4 inches above the ground every 3 to 4 weeks. Each plant will produce 4 to 5 full harvests per growing season. Lay the cut leaves directly around the base of your vegetable plants as a mulch. They will decompose within 2 weeks and release their full mineral payload into the soil. For concentrated liquid feed, fill a bucket 2/3 full with chopped comfrey leaves, top with water, cover loosely, and steep for 10 to 14 days. Dilute the resulting dark liquid at a ratio of 1 part tea to 10 parts water. Apply directly to the soil around fruiting crops, tomatoes, peppers, squash, and beans every 2 weeks during the growing season. The smell during steeping is strong. That is the nitrogen. It means it is working. Total startup cost $12 to $20 one time. Total annual cost after establishment $0. Total time per harvest, 15 minutes. Compare that to $200 to $600 per year in synthetic fertilizer, purchased every season forever. A woman named Clara Beckett in Bend, Oregon, established 14 comfrey plants along the border of her quarter-acre vegetable garden in 2018. Her annual fertilizer budget before comfrey was $380. Her annual fertilizer budget since 2019 has been $0. Her most recent soil test, conducted in October 2024, showed available potassium 40% higher than the county average for amended garden beds. Comfrey is a free weed with a 10-foot taproot that mines potassium from bedrock, generates its own nitrogen through biomass cycling, and grows back every time you cut it. The science has been published. The results have been documented for over a century. The $230 billion fertilizer industry has maintained perfect silence. This knowledge is not lost. It was locked inside research journals and permaculture circles that mainstream gardening media made sure you would never find. If this video cracked something open for you, subscribe and share it with every gardener, homesteader, and backyard grower you know who still buys bags of fertilizer every spring. Every like and every share preserves what the fertilizer industry tried to bury under 60 years of synthetic dependency.